Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And it's been a minute, but I am absolutely delighted to welcome back to the channel Nina Christopher from Nina's Chelsea Corner. Nina, mate, it's been ages. How are you doing?
It has been a long time. I'm good, thank you. It's nice to be on again. Looking forward to the season, which is what I say every year. And then there comes a point where I'm disappointed and wishing it's over. But hopefully
Yeah.
this season can be different. We say the same thing, but it just feels like there's a bit more reason to be optimistic. So I'm happy. I'm feeling good.
It does feel different as well, albeit, like you say, I've been the same. Like going into, even with Graham Potter, I was like, maybe it'll be fine. Maybe it'll be okay. The hiring of Liam Rosenior, I desperately tried to justify to myself why I think maybe it might be okay. And no, the house has been on fire for a long time. But genuinely, hiring Xabi Alonso seems to have been the catalyst for a different mood around the fans, the club, and, the model and stuff in general. So what I want to do with you today is I want to talk about Xabi Alonso, and I want to get an idea of how you feel about him, what, the difference in, where we've been to where we are and what might happen. And I just think that it's time to talk about Xabi Alonso. So we'll start quite generally. Nina, how did you feel when Liam Rosenior was sacked and we managed to upgrade to Xabi Alonso?
Yeah, great. I think this is the first time as a fan base we've been united in our excitement for an appointment of a manager, especially under the new ownership. And I think he's certainly the most qualified as well on paper.
Yeah.
I think when you look at the way we've been hiring managers, Liam Rosenior came in as somebody who we all thought, he's going to fail. It's no disrespect to him, but the
No, not
CV,
at all.
the credentials, they just don't speak very inspiring words to you, and it all obviously came crashing down. So I think from an excitement perspective, it's definitely there, and you have more reason to believe that it could work out. Again, he's now been in and around Europe. He was definitely one of the managers that it has and been linked with the top clubs in Europe. So that
Yep.
speaks, magnitude alone. And I'm excited. I think he's obviously still a young manager as well and still got so much more to achieve. But, you look at him in Germany and what he went on to achieve there. And of course, Madrid had its difficulties. But, you're talking about the top clubs, and he's been able to do something great. So it gives you reason to believe there's definitely more justification and I guess less of that risk factor as well, which
Yeah.
we've had with previous managers. But, you look at all the appointments under the new owners. You said Graham Potter earlier. I had my apprehensive thoughts about him, but you think, okay, he did bits with Brighton, got them somewhere, but it was Brighton, and is this a massive job after what's been such a big transition for the club at the point he walked into as well? So maybe you can cut Potter a bit of slack there, but really it just was a terrible year for us. Pochettino, I think maybe was the manager I said we could give a bit more time, but then again, the football was quite dire and it just all became very very boring. And Maresca, I think, again, I wasn't sure and I wasn't really excited at that point because I thought we're not going to find a manager that we're going to stick by. They came in with this big ambition that we would go away from hiring and firing managers and giving out 5-year contracts to managers who have barely been around the Premier League or again a big club was just, it just kind of gave us the idea they didn't really know what they were doing. So then eventually when he went as well, you're thinking, right, well, the next one, it has to be right, It just has to be. So you're thinking, Xabi Alonso, please, could this be our kind of Klopp from Liverpool, Pep at City, and of course Arteta at Arsenal? You just really want him to be.
I think there's so many really interesting things about what you just said there. And there's so much to unpack. I think the first thing that I want to get to is the fan feeling. Obviously the last season, it was just so difficult to even, as football fans, we are biased and we have hope and copium, and we believe that even on the darkest day, the light can shine through, right? And it just didn't happen at all, to the point where it was just we even stopped believing. Do you know what I mean? Even just a point where it's maybe this thing, we're all just nah, man, it's just bad, isn't it? It's just bad. So how have you been reveling in the fan feeling? Because I know you're a match goer, obviously. Have you been in contact with other people that you go to games with, or what's the feeling in your world, the fan feeling about the Xabi Alonso signing?
Yeah, I think generally really good. Again, pre-season we often get a bit too excited with, and sometimes you take more than you should really from it because it's
Yeah.
never really translated as precisely as that. And results are mixed, of course, but players just settling in. So I think the general idea is that people are excited again, which was very much not the case towards the end of last season. People were just ready to not return to Stamford Bridge. Going there felt
Yeah.
at times like a bit of a chore, and you never like to say that. You want to always go excited, and I've been going for many years and I still go there and I'm excited to go, and that's the feeling that you generally kind of stick by. But I can't pretend like last season was joyous. It really wasn't towards the end. But I think, yeah, I've spoken to quite a few people. Obviously, like, I've watched the fan cams on Chelsea Fan TV that we always do, and people seem quite excited again, which is
Yeah.
nice. But it's a pattern every year after pre-season. You're on cloud nine. Last year we won the Club World Cup. We came into the season all very optimistic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think excited is the general consensus among fans.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one big thing for that is kind of the next thing that I want to pick up on is this is the first Blue Cone managerial appointment that we are all on board with. I think top to bottom, fans to hierarchy to players to everyone. Do you know what I mean? Everyone is really on board with this hiring, because Graham Potter, Enzo Maresca, Liam Rosenior, less so Mauricio Pochettino, but that kind of, for me, was always a stopgap. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they wanted him. He was just like a two-year deal. Do you know what I mean? Or 1+1 even. So it was written in the stars that it probably wasn't going to be long-term. But when you look at Xabi Alonso, it's the first time they've hired a manager that isn't, we
manager
hope he grows.
As well, by the way.
Yeah, manager. Yeah, exactly. So, I think there's a lot to say about Blueco's period of self-reflection seems to have paid off. But he's just the first manager that has winning credentials, and it feels like we've brought an adult into the room. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, like, the squad's been really young, and albeit the managers themselves weren't young, they hadn't really cut their teeth at a high level at all. And albeit, a lot of people might sniff at what Alonso did in Germany because it's Germany, but I think that's a ridiculous point for me. It's like, you win an invincible double and nearly one game off an invincible treble anywhere. That's super impressive. And his win rate with Real Madrid was 75%. So for me, like, I think the excitement factor for me is this is the first time I've been excited by the managerial appointment as well as the players and stuff, because Potter was like, yeah, like you say, he did bits with Brighton, and Maresca was like, okay, he's like, burgeoning manager that's got a championship or whatever. But even that in itself, like, Maresca won the championship with essentially what amounted to a Premier League team, because he still had, loads of like Premier League level players in that team at the time. So yeah, I want to know what you think about that as well. Just like having the adult in the room with Xabi Alonso, because he is guiding Blueco more so. And it really feels like for the first time that Blueco aren't at necessarily just the top of the hierarchy in terms of the sporting footballing project now. They're like deferring to Xabi Alonso's experience, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, certainly. And he wins a lot of respect, instantly from the dressing room, because you walk in and they may not know you as a manager, but they've watched you as a player and they know what you were like. And I think that's such a big factor, and it distinguishes you from other managers, because when somebody walks in and you've, again, like, maybe looked up to him at some point, or you've watched him in a winning team, it's a little bit different, because they have the actual, I guess, reason to be a bit more, authoritative, to have a little bit more, I guess, greater demands as well, or to like demand more, because they've been in around winning and success. So I think that's a really big and important factor, and we haven't had many of those at the club already. Like you say, if you place him with the other managers that we've had or head coaches rather, as I should call them, under the new owners, then Alonso immediately stands out before he's
100%.
even coached a game in the Premier League. So that's really important. He's still very young as well. I think that's quite exciting. I think he understands the game in a little bit of a different way as well. And again, now you've been in Germany, you've managed in Spain. Of course, it's quite different that you're going to come to England, but he's played in England, and I think that's one thing. And of course, we'll see how he unfolds as a manager. But I think already, like, judging by just some of the little decisions that he's making in pre-season, I think his man management has been quite good. The players seem to already have taken quite a bit of a liking into him, which is important. It's not
Yeah.
exactly like we have a dressing room, I'd say, with big egos as well, where you're thinking, can he really like manage that? A lot of these players are going to be keen to like prove themselves to him, which means they'll be a little bit more eager, which I think is a
Yeah.
good quality. They'll all be playing with a point to prove, especially because, a lot of our players weren't really at the World Cup. Well, they were, but they didn't really get far, or they weren't
Yeah.
necessarily players that everyone was talking about over summer.
Like bench players and stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Some of them weren't picked, so they're going to all be kind of coming out the blocks with a point to prove for this new manager. And I think in general, players really have had to do that a lot under, the new regime, as I call it, because things change so much. And, one day you are envisioned to be a player here to stay for years to come. The next window, you're gone in a heartbeat, and it's like you didn't really ever matter. So I think that could play into that could be a good thing, I think, for Chelsea this season. But yeah, just really, really excited to see him succeed is what I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously no one knows what's going to happen. Maybe he turns out to be terrible, but it does definitely feel like success is on the cards.
It has to work out.
It does have to work out. One thing I think you touched on there that is really, really important is something that we have really been missing for the last few seasons is squad culture, right? And I think that he has instantly come in, and a few of the things that have been done have instantly been in order to fix that squad culture. Largely, I'm obviously talking about the signings of Jordan Henderson and Danny Welbeck, injecting a mixture of winning experience and just being in and around big teams for a long time into the squad to kind of create a connection between the management and the tactical approach and also the players on the pitch. So it's not two sides. Now there's like a link between the two. So how did you feel about Jordan Henderson and Danny Welbeck?
Good. I think I'm someone who values experience a lot, and I know it's easy to label an older player as experienced, and age doesn't necessarily translate into experience. But I think for those two in particular, it does, because Henderson's literally won trophies, major trophies that a lot of our players haven't even dreamed of in this squad, a lot of the young ones in particular. I think it goes a long way to have those characters in the dressing room. And again, you hear the likes of Jude Bellingham speaking about Henderson at the World Cup, people raising eyebrows like, why is Henderson still getting called up to the England squad? Just hire him in the backroom staff if you have to. Why does he need to take up a room as a player? But the way that he is in the dressing room, the way that he speaks to them, the way that he can manage characters and knows how to get through to players is quite an important quality, which we haven't had. Again, lots of young players coming in, not knowing how to settle into the Premier League, just learning on the job day by day, watching, a turnover of staff, people coming and going with longevity not really being a thing, because we don't really have longevity at Chelsea. There's very few players that have been around that now, since maybe even as soon as winning the Champions League. We know that the squad's basically completely done and dusted and has undergone transition. So it's just nice to have those characters. Obviously, how much they'll play and how much game time they'll get is another question, but even a Welbeck, bringing him on late on, just someone who has good movement in the box as well, can maybe get in the end of a cross and win you a game sometimes. I think that goes a long way as well, because lots of times last season you looked at our bench and you think you don't necessarily have a match winner sat there. And I'm not saying that Henderson and Welbeck are players that can come on and win you a game, but why not? And I think that again, just having those players there that can tell you, pull your socks up, you've gone 1-0 down, but this game isn't lost. And I think words of encouragement go a long way. And like I said, players who are keen to learn, who have the potential, they just need to be directed sometimes. They need to be spoken at. And I think those are characters that you'll like. So after banging on about experience for so long, how can I possibly sit here and tell you those are terrible signings? Because they're not. You're not overpaying. You're not paid 100 million to bring in Henderson and Welbeck as well. But good characters to have there. And I think it could go a long way in the squad.
Definitely, and I 100% agree with you. I think it's really interesting, that there is some sort of pushback, and I think the only pushback there is, or people that aren't happy with them, are exclusively thinking about how much they're going to play and how much they're going to contribute to GA and stuff like that. But it's you need everything in it to make a squad, right? And I think one of the problems we've had with the depth recently is because everyone is a young player. everyone is always desperate to prove themselves because they've got so much of their career in front of them. And I think if you bring a Liam Delap on and you've got 20 minutes to go, you need a goal, as well as just focusing on the game, in the back of his head, he's putting pressure on himself saying, I have to prove myself right now. I have to prove myself right now. Yeah. With Danny Welbeck and Jordan Henderson, they come on with nothing but the game in mind. That's all they're thinking about. They're not here thinking, oh, I'm looking to break records, or I'm looking to make sure I get my next move, or be sure that the manager puts me in the next game, or whatever. It's like these guys are in the twilight of their careers, and the only thing that they're here to do is get results and be part of that change, like the culture change. And I think it's so important that clearly, and you mentioned it with the England thing, like when Jude Bellingham scored for England once, the first thing he did was run over to Jordan Henderson and celebrate with him, and Jordan Henderson was over on the bench. That instantly tells you how important that moment was to Jude Bellingham to go and celebrate it with Jordan Henderson, because albeit maybe Jordan Henderson didn't get the assist or wasn't the one coaching him, he clearly had some sort of influence and impact on Jude Bellingham during the training, which made Jude Bellingham, as still a relatively young player, look over to Jordan Henderson and go, oh, I did it. And it's, do you know what I mean? And to see stuff like that, I think is going to be really important in the squad, and it makes the squad feel more harmonious and together and stuff as well. And like I say, and the other thing for me is training as well. Like, there's an interesting thing being talked about at the moment with there's a second group training away from the first team, right? And people are worried about the bomb squad being a thing again. Now, legally, that can't happen. But I think what's interesting about this second group is it contains Danny Welbeck and Jordan Henderson. So if this was just your Axel Disassis and, people that aren't sure about their futures or aren't sure about getting game time, then some anxiety starts to breed and maybe some toxic kind of, a situation starts to emerge where the players aren't sure what's going on and it gets a bit negative. But with a Jordan Henderson and a Danny Welbeck as part of that group as well, it's not, they get to be like, look, like, just chill, guys. Do you know what I mean? It's cool. Like, we're just not needed at the moment, or this is just how it is right now. And it's both things. It's an extension of Xabi Alonso's management group, essentially, but also they are players that will be trying to get minutes and want to get on the pitch and stuff as well. So no, I think it's fascinating. I think the overarching thing with Xabi Alonso is, and I kind of mentioned it before, where it's like he now seems to be the top, and everything kind of is coming down. And like you said, it's being called a manager. There was a lot of questions at the beginning. Is that just an arbitrary thing, just a PR move to get the fans happier and stuff? But it really does seem to be, like, you can see it with things like Bernardo Cuevas, the set piece guy. He's been moved over to another position, and we've brought in Austin McPhee because, Xabi Alonso has clearly identified this is a problem in the squad and we need to sort it out. Experience has been brought in. And, like Palestra was obviously a Xabi Alonso signing. Pep Chavardia is a really interesting example, I think, because albeit cheap player, not exactly tearing up trees or whatever, we negotiated for months to get this guy because Xabi Alonso really wanted him. So that, shows you it's not necessarily just about the money. Xabi wants it, so Xabi gets it. So what other sort of influence do you think that Xabi Alonso might be able to have on the squad or the team in general as a manager rather than just being a head coach?
I think if you look at it purely from like a tactical perspective as well, it's going to be something quite different that we obviously haven't seen, which I think is a good thing. You're talking about not knowing how to set up against Chelsea. We don't even know how Alonso is really going to set us up. Obviously, we know that he's going to try out different formations as well. We've already seen a glimpse of it in pre-season. But again, I think there's something quite exciting about certain players that we've maybe been a little bit doubtful about, maybe perhaps having another level of their game unlocked under Alonso because of the system he will play. And that's why I'm perhaps a bit more keen to see players and give them another chance this season. Like, I've spoken a lot about Pedro Neto, and of course we're not too sure whether he's got really a future at Chelsea this season. It remains to be seen whether someone's keen to pay a steep fee for our Pedro Neto. But, you talk about him potentially as a wing-back option, and I think the way that Neto's been playing in recent years, since we signed him as well, I wouldn't say that Pedro Neto has been elevated as a player, or that we're going to sell a player who's turned into someone who wasn't scoring goals to someone who is, because that's not the case. You're talking about a Neto who's maintained the same level basically since he arrived, right? Like we know he's fast, we know he's got a decent cross on him. Maybe crosses a bit too much at times, like a bit apprehensive about taking on his man, and sometimes like recycles the ball too much. But I think under Alonso, maybe in that wing back role, he could be quite, threatening. And I think, again, with someone like Joao Pedro as well, and Cole Palmer hopefully back to his best, we're talking about more players who can get maybe on the end of more of those Neto crosses. So I think it's exciting. You look at Palestra as well as a profile, someone who I think under Alonso could be amazing. And I think there's just so many certain partnerships as well that we're yet to see kind of come into fruition, which is exciting because we know we've got players. It's just been a real struggle to kind of make them a team. And I think actually under Alonso, and to answer your question, and another thing we could see him do is give this team a bit of an identity, give them an actual identity, which we haven't seen, where, when Chelsea's coming out to play, you can talk about a collective good performance more often than talking about certain individuals who are performing well, because that's what it's really been. Esteban's had a brilliant game. Oh, today Neto performed really well. Oh, but our defence was really poor. Or Robert Sanchez had an absolutely incredible game, but everybody else was bad. And then Sanchez is going to have an absolute shocking game, but our attack is going to perform really well. So it's just about a bit more balance, I think. And, especially at Leverkusen, you see it, like he picked them up from literally the bottom of the table, and slowly see them form a bit of an identity, and their confidence became absolutely incredible as well. So I think it's just about kind of getting the team to play as a team rather than as a bunch of individuals, because I think that's where consistency will come from. That's been another enemy, right? Chelsea consistency, they haven't gone hand in hand this these last few seasons. And I think the next thing for Chelsea and the biggest challenge is, can you stay consistent in the Premier League? Because we've been impressed by the wins in isolation against the big teams and some of those top performances, but I think what's more impressive now is going on a run, avoiding that mid-season slump in December and not losing to Coventry and Hull in that period we have over Christmas. And I think that's going to be the biggest actually improvement. So if Alonso can do that, if he can get some more consistency going, then we're not talking about winning the Premier League this season, but you're talking about hopefully challenging if you're stringing some more consistency. So actually that's what I'm looking at Alonso. I'm like, can you actually get a tune consistently out of this team and make them look like a team?
I think that's so important, because one of the weirdest things about Chelsea over the last few years is like we can go out and beat PSG and AC Milan, and we can get results against Liverpool and stuff, but it's like we make Leeds look like Real Madrid and we're getting draws to Bournemouth and Qarabag, and it's like for some reason Maresca in particular was really good at turning up against the big teams for whatever reason. But I think one of the issues with Maresca is also something that I don't foresee being a problem with Xabi Alonso, was Maresca's system was entirely based on his system and not necessarily the players that he had in his squad. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I feel like Xabi Alonso has a philosophy and a baseline philosophy about possession, high pressing, but he wants players like Cole Palmer, Joao Pedro, potentially Morgan Rogers to dynamically react and express themselves, and for that to be part of the system. Whereas Maresca was very much like, wingers get the ball, wingers take the ball wide. If there's no opportunity, turn around, pass it back, recycle. Cole Palmer, when the ball's here, you have to be here. And do you know what I mean? It was all really, really like, everyone was, each position was so detailed. And that's just kind of his style. And ultimately, at its pomp, it won us a couple of trophies. The game against PSG obviously being, albeit he did something quite different in that game. But with Xabi Alonso, it feels very much more like his base principles are solid defending, playing out from the back, width from the wing backs, but everything at the top end in particular feels like it might be about to become more dynamic. So there's a couple of things that you said there are brilliant. I really want to pick up on. So one thing I just think is so important is the Xabi Alonso effect, right? And I think we've seen it at both of the teams that he's been at the moment. If you look at the wing backs at Leverkusen, Alejandro Grimaldo was essentially a Barcelona reject. Like, he tried it at Barcelona and it didn't work out, and he just kind of got to his mid-20s and then went to Leverkusen not because he was amazing, because it wasn't going well for him. Man's getting 24 GA a season every season now, even after Xabi Alonso has left. He's turned him into this absolute monster. You see the same with Granit Xhaka. Granit Xhaka had a very, very mixed fortunes at Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't like he wasn't just always this phenomenal player. But now, obviously, he is the general in that Leverkusen team, and he drags Sunderland into the, what was it, 7th? They finished 6th or 7th, something like that. Like, absolutely wild stuff. And again, that is a lot of Xabi Alonso's influence that is remained in him as well. This is another thing I think is really important. So you said about, I can't remember who it was. There was Pedro Neto. So Pedro Neto potentially being a beneficiary of this. I think there's a few players in the squad that, myself included, have like kind of written off before the season, the window started. And one of which is like Wesley Fofana, for instance.
Yeah.
Wesley Fofana, there's clearly a good player in there, but attitude and difficulties, and do you know what I mean? We've all kind of written him off because of bad performances. Wesley Fofana feels like the kind of player that Xabi Alonso might just be able to go, do you know what? I can turn you into this guy. And some of these forgotten names may well benefit from the Xabi Alonso effect, because we saw it at Leverkusen, we saw it with young players at Real Madrid in particular, the likes of Arda Güler and the left back Carreras, and was it Garcia, the guy that's just gone to Fulham as well? Like, he quite, do you know what I mean? It's like, we've seen it on both ends of the spectrum with him taking players that are getting towards the end of their career and giving them these kind of purple patches and making them amazing for their twilights, but also taking really young players. So is there any other players other than Pedro Neto and Wesley Fofana that you think might benefit from the Xabi Alonso effect?
I think, and maybe this is just from an individual perspective as well, but I think Levi Colwill, because we know how incredible he is. And I think, like, we didn't even see the best from Colwill, even though he reached this peak of his game before he got injured, and we were all so excited to see it. But I think under Alonso, with the mindset that Colwill now has, because this guy is just so ready, to tear it up, and I think he could be one of the best defenders in the league, full stop. And I think Alonso could have a big part to play in that as well. You're talking about taking a player who's been out and just ready. He's watched his team struggle. He's watched his team literally be dragged through last season, not being able to do anything about it. But yeah, that paired with his mentality, paired with his physical attributes, that his vision as well and his intelligence, I think under Alonso could be quite special. And of course, again, I think we might need to be a little bit more patient with our defence though, because we're talking about a new look defence under Alonso as well, and not just in terms of setup, but in terms of players in it as well, because we've obviously now acquired Lacroix as well, who's another player that we're not too sure what to really expect from him, because pre-season I heard some mixed comments about him, but I'm not going to judge that player off pre-season. For me, this is an entirely new guy. I'm not even going to pretend I've watched him week in, week out at Palace, because I haven't, and I think I'm just excited to see what he can do. I think in terms of from a physical perspective, it's nice to have a bigger guy there as well. I think particularly one-on-one we've struggled a little bit. We've really been shrugged off easily, and at times obviously we know aerially as well we don't have much threat. That's another big kind of factor that we hopefully will improve in. But yeah, it's just exciting to see. But I think we've talked about patience a lot, and I think we've become increasingly more impatient as the years have gone by. But if there's one area we might at least have to give a bit of time, it is our defence. And I think in recent years, it's been so chop and change. We've probably been up there with the team that has changed their back line so many
100%.
times. It's been makeshift back lines and things that just haven't made sense. And we know, and you can judge off, the Premier League winners, Arsenal, how important a solid defence is, really.
Yeah, 100%.
So if we want to be in that conversation, coming up against some of the best attackers in the league, because the league this year has some ridiculous talent up front, and it's going to be so difficult to defend. So yeah, I think that's one area that I'm a little bit still not too sure how that's going to play out. But again, Alonso, it's all yours. I'm all eyes and ears.
I think the really interesting thing about the defence in that respect is, even if you look at our own success, like Mourinho's football was built off of solid defence. Ancelotti obviously took over from that solid defence. Then Antonio Conte comes in with our first iteration of the three at the back, injected that formation into the Premier League, and ultimately took what would look like quite an average defence in most teams in Gary Cahill, David Luiz and Cesar Azpilicueta, albeit Azpilicueta was amazing. But those three, you don't necessarily look at those three and be like, you're going to smash it this year and win the league by 14 points or whatever. But they did, because they just played their role so well, and they all covered for each other's kind of deficiencies and stuff. So yeah, it's just the defence. I agree with you completely. I think it's probably had the biggest change, because albeit Maresca did a relatively good job, it's like because the system's so different now, it's just going to look different. And I think Maxence Lacroix, and with Levi Colwill having been out for all of last season, he's almost like new again, isn't he? You know, because he's not like familiar. Albeit, what I will say is he was transformative as soon as he came back into the team last season.
Yeah.
So it was obvious how much we were missing that. So going back to the Xabi Alonso effect. So who do you think? So Levi Colwill was a great shout for like, and that's not even necessarily like he's been off the boil. That could be like he goes from a good player to an unbelievable player. What about young players? If you could pick one young player in the team at the moment who you think specifically will break out and really benefit from Xabi Alonso's tutelage, who are you looking at?
Well, all of our players are quite young, aren't they? How young are we talking? Are we talking
Let's say
in
like
the category of
under
like
21.
Estivals, under 21s?
Under 21, yeah.
Under 21s. Gosh, I've just now forgotten everyone's age. They're all
well, there's the like
Estival,
Kenda, Estival, Kenda,
yeah. I almost forget he's our player, Quenda.
Yeah.
I have literally like, who is he?
Achiampong, Yoro Hato.
Hato. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think Hato, when we first brought him in, was kind of seen as the understudy of Cucurella, who would like step and inherit his role. But I think that role, because it's now like changing, it would be interesting to see how Hato can be in a back three. I'm still not entirely convinced, to be honest, as a player himself. It's hard to say if Alonso. I know, obviously, I've said a lot about Alonso, but I don't think he's this magic man who can just transform players and make them all amazing. But it's interesting, like Estival you mentioned, because I think I've seen a lot of like kind of first lineups and how we might set up and what this best 11 under Alonso looks like. And interestingly, Estival's not in it. And it's not because, you know, we think he's a bad player, but in just the way that we're setting up, Estival's not really like quite there in terms of like his actual role. Like it is just not there. Like we've obviously been using him as a wide winger, and that's kind of generally where we've seen him. But you know, if we're like playing with dual tens and you're talking about like Rodgers and Palmer starting behind Pedro, then Estival's place is not there, and you may be talking about him coming on and you know, when our formation changes in games, which it will, like maybe there's a role for him off the bench. But you know, Estival at some point, we're envisioning him being one of our like best players and starters, but you ask yourself, well, where can he actually play? So I'm interested to know what you think as well, because he's obviously a very talented player. We all love him. There's obviously talks about like his like a new contract, which I think is amazing, and it's what you want to hear, because if there's one player you want to hang on to at Chelsea, it is Estival. This guy should not be leaving. Like full stop, not anytime, 100%. Not now, not next year, not anytime soon, because like we haven't even seen him in like a consistent like kind of role, but every single time he plays, we know how good this guy is. And I just asked 100%. Myself, it's so exciting. And I think again, under Alonso, you'd back him to be still amazing, but will he play like consistently?
So it's a really interesting case of Estival at the moment, isn't it? Because of the shift in formation. If we were sticking with the 4-2-3-1, then there's an argument for Rodgers, Palmer and Estival to all easily get into the team at the same time on a regular basis. But with this is what we're looking at now, all of a sudden there are question marks. I completely agree with you. I think Estival potentially is the future of that kind of position, and that might be at the detriment of Cole Palmer at the end of the day. So when we, you know, Cole Palmer has looked more sprightly in pre-season than he has for a while. I think the worst thing that happened to Cole Palmer was him having that phenomenal season under Pochettino, and that he set the expectation of that's the kind of player that he is. And obviously we haven't seen that again. So I think the truth is, just from a profile, if Cole Palmer doesn't kick on, and this is a big if, then that is Estival's shot to get into the team, isn't it? Because albeit Xabi Alonso will want to get the best out of everyone, he also needs to win games. And if Estival is coming in and is confident and is scoring goals and is making things happen in substitute appearances, and Cole Palmer's maybe not making so much happen, then maybe that is where it happens. Do you know what I mean? Is it like that seems like the, you know, it may be a little bit lazy, but the obvious kind of idea at the moment for me is like, if Cole Palmer doesn't kick on, Estival kind of takes that spot. The other unfortunate option there is if Cole Palmer does kick on and Estival also kicks on at the same time, then Cole Palmer's the one that gets sold, isn't he? Like, to be completely honest. And, this feels like I love Cole Palmer and I want nothing more than for him to get back to having that big influence in the team. But this kind of feels like, because this will be the third season now that Cole Palmer hasn't had that Pochettino style season or that phenomenal one, because he's been dealing with injuries and stuff. It's not, it's been difficult. But it feels like if Cole Palmer doesn't kick on this season and Esteval does, that is the position. The other argument there is, albeit we haven't got as many games, rotation will still be a thing. And because if we're looking to favour these number 10s, then Esteval can play the left and the right. It's not like Morgan Rogers is going to play every single game there. Do you know what I mean? So we could see Rogers Esteval, we could see Esteval Palmer at the same time, or we could see something like what I thought was fascinating in the Real Sociedad game. When Malagusto was brought on, I really didn't expect to see this at all. Malagusto was playing at right wing back, but actually started inverting into the midfield, which allowed Esteval to push out to the wide right. So that's another permutation of the possibilities that you're able to do depending on who stays in the team. If you've got a Kenda there or if you've got a Palestra there, then they're taking the width. But Malagusto has proven himself adept to be able to dip into the midfield. So I think that there are options. If we were going in with a European season, like if we had, I'd feel less worried about it because it's like, right, there's going to be game time at the wazoo for everyone. But no, it's a bit of a worry because it's like you've got these two players in Palmer and Esteval who are similar profiles, but they are different players. Obviously, Esteval's a lot more like athletic and pacey, and Cole Palmer's a bit more of a creator, string puller type. But there's only so many games, isn't there? So it is going to be, fascinating. And I just think the thing is, if Esteval is the young player that blooms and blossoms immeasurably, then someone's going to lose out, and it's going to be probably one of the two half-space players in either Morgan Rogers or Cole Palmer. But if all three of them end up being amazing, then maybe Xabi Alonso changes the system to try and find a way to fit them all in.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it is really nice to talk about this depth, though, isn't it? Because I feel like every season we kind of think we have lots of depth and everything's really exciting on paper. But I think there's more reason to believe that this kind of front line that we now have forming with like all these like kind of interchangeable players as well. They've got goals on them now. Like you've obviously seen Joao Pedro at his best. Like if this guy can keep up his form from last season and pre-season, then we're in for a very, very good season, I think, because Pedro, like on his day, like the way that he moves in the box as well, we just haven't had just a traditional number 9, like the one that can just get on the ends of crosses. Like his movement's great, his link up play is also good. He's not just lurking there goal hanging waiting for goals. Like his movement is good. Cole Palmer, like you say, hopefully can be like back to his best. Like Rogers, I'm excited about Rogers. I just don't really know what to expect. I think it's a bit naive to think that Rogers' output is going to be like exceptional, because Villa fans will tell you like on his day he's great, like, but consistently like sometimes he also struggles. But I think the bigger thing about Rogers is who he's playing with. And I think, again, Cole Palmer, if we can get the best Cole Palmer out, then that's a special duo because they know how to play with each other. Again, that's such a welcome like attribute and quality that you've got two players there who off the field, friends, on the field, they know how they play. And it's like they know what they want, they know where they thrive, they know where they want the ball, they know which run they're going to make. And that's special and it goes a long way. And of course, Joao Pedro, again, he knows Palmer too. He knows Esteval, obviously the Brazilian duo. So it's nice that we've got chemistry and we're not completely like starting from scratch with all these players. We're just like about to meet each other and we're going to throw them in the league and say, right, come on, start scoring goals, assist each other, work it out somehow.
I think it's one of the things I love about this squad so far is we're starting to see a mix of something that I feel like we haven't had enough of. We've got a mix of competition in the squad, but also some depth players that are not necessarily competition, but support. So I think the problem that we've had is like, you just said it about depth, like the back end of last season, I think it was like the last 4 or 5 games in a row, every single game, Alejandro Garnacho and Liam Delap come on for the last 20 minutes, half an hour. It's like, the problem with that is Delap never ever pushed Joao Pedro, ever.
No.
And Garnacho was not even able to bench Pedro Neto, who's actually a right winger. So the competition element didn't really exist. You know what I mean? And what we've got now is competition all over the park, everywhere. Apart from Moises Caicedo and João Pedro, I would argue there's some kind of competition for every other player in the squad. And I think that's something we've been missing. If you go back to when we first brought in Nicholas Jackson was our undisputed, unchallenged first choice striker for 2 seasons in a row. And it's like, and we've just kind of done that again with João Pedro, albeit the idea of Liam Delap was competition. 2 goals in 41 games is not competition, is it? So I think that, you know, albeit there might be some negative connotation to the conversation about like Esteval and Cole Palmer and stuff. It's like, oh, because you don't want to lose any of them. You want to keep all of them and you want them all to do really well. The good thing about that is there, albeit, you know, hopefully everyone gets on and enjoys playing together and stuff. But at the same time, Cole Palmer needs to feel like I've got Esteval pushing me, and Morgan Rogers needs to be also like I've got Esteval pushing me. So if I'm not kicking on, then there's another guy ready there to take my spot. All of the wing backs at the moment, you know, at the moment we've still got Gusto. There's obviously Chavadia. There's you know, Pedro Neto's being tried there. Kenda's being tried there, and that's another thing. We have versatile players like Kenda, who maybe we play him as a wing back, but maybe he gets that kind of 10, that half space number 10 role as well. There's so much competition over all of the pitch. Maybe apart from in defence at the moment, that's like you said, that feels like maybe the one where it's like we just kind of need to get something a little bit settled. But even the goalkeeper situation, Rob Sanchez now has got maybe arguably the most talented young keeper in the world, albeit whether he's ready for this level or not, we don't know. But he's looking over his shoulder. He wasn't looking over his shoulder at Philip Jorgensen for the last 2 years, was he? It was very much every time Philip Jorgensen got an opportunity, it was because Rob Sanchez had a stinker and got dropped. But this time it's going to be like, it's not even just about Rob Sanchez having a stinker. It's about if I don't have a good enough game, then this guy's behind me and he might get the opportunity. So I think that's been one really smart thing is like, you know, the likes of Henderson and Welbeck, they're not there to compete. They're there to support, be a net. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, right, I need to get Jordan Henderson on to see the game out, or we need a goal and Danny Welbeck can do that kind of thing. But there's also in all these other positions, and especially in the midfield, obviously, Moises Caicedo was kind of nailed on for that. But that other role, is it going to be Reece James? Is it going to be Valentin Barco? Is it going to be Romeo Lavia? Is it going to be potentially the likes of an Adam Morton or an Alex Scott if we end up bringing them in as well? And I think that's really important because what we've had like a kind of a first team that chose itself, but not for the right reasons, because none of the depth that we've had for the last few years, for the most part, maybe arguably apart from Esteval, but he obviously had the injury issues and stuff, but our depth has been so unthreatening to the first team for such a long time, where you put in Pedro Neto out left, even though that's not his best position, but he's going to do a better job than the nearly 100 million you've spent on Alejandro Garnacho and Jamie Gittins, right?
Yeah, no, you make some great points, especially like on our bench. I think our bench got more and more uninspiring as the season progressed, and you ask yourself, well, where has this depth gone? Because, you know, at some point you're kind of researching who's on the bench, you know, who's this like 20-year-old who've got sat there, and it just all became a bit too awful. So you were just kind of banking on your first team doing a job, and even they were struggling, so you were just a bit stuck. So yeah, like hopefully we've got a little bit more creative outlets sat there, and you know that those players are going to be sat on the bench, are going to be hungry, because again, you're talking about that healthy competition. Nobody's place is necessarily like a guarantee. Well, of course there are kind of key players you mentioned there, of course, but apart from like 2 or 3, everybody else is potentially like could be dislodged at some point. So I think that's exciting, and obviously we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, oh my God, honestly, like all this talk has just made me like even more excited, and I don't know if this is like a good thing or a bad thing, because I'm sat here like feeling so confident now that this could be a good season. But yeah, of course, I think one thing is hard, you know, it's easy to like look at Alonso's like title winning season in Germany and take heart from that, but you know, like let's not pretend that at some point they didn't run away with it. It's not going to be like that, you know. When you're in the Premier League, you saw it like last season, you've seen it in the previous kind of couple of seasons, especially like with how the title races have been, and Obviously certain teams have dropped off at some point in the season,
Yeah.
but generally you're looking at going up until like all the way till the end and having to maintain a certain level because you've got a team or two breathing down your neck. So when it does,
Yeah.
it does come to that point, it's going to take a lot more than that, because I think, when Leverkusen won the league, they were like 15, 20 points clear
Yeah, it
at
was
the very top.
crazy.
And
Yeah, it's
it's
wild.
obviously, again, not taking away from what he did, because it was exceptional, especially like in such a short time span that he had at the club. But the Premier League is different gravy. And of course,
Yeah.
our next ambition is to be winning the league at some point. It's been so long, we're coming up to 10 years. So it's like, that's the next step that all Chelsea fans have dreamed of. We've been so far off. It's been yo-yoing up and down and like trying to secure Champions League football, getting Champions League football, getting thrown out, smacked back to reality. Okay, fine, the next goal is get back into the Champions League. And it's like, no, this was meant to be the year, like year 5 was supposed to be serious title challenges, like talking about winning the league. So it's like, reality hits you hard. And again, it's like, let's get consistent. That's the first thing we have to do. Obviously, like let's
100%.
adapt to this philosophy and kind of see what we're going to be under Alonso. But that dream is still there, and you'd rather reach it sooner rather than later. So we'll see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, I think this is such a fascinating season because, for two reasons. One, I feel more confident going into this season with all of the change than I did going into last season after winning the Club World Cup and having Maresca for a season. And I'm looking at our squad and our manager now, and I feel actually like, and that combined with the nature of what we're going into, right? Because bar Arsenal, everything has changed for all of the big teams that you would expect to challenge. So if we were going in and Pep was still at City, and Slot, even if Slot was having another crack at Liverpool after sort of bringing them back up at the end, and if there was more consistency in the teams around us, I'd be a bit more like, right, I think maybe it'll be a bit more difficult, because consistency, as you've just said, is so important. But we're going into Maresca's Man City, Andoni Iraola's Liverpool, obviously Roberto De Zerbi at Tottenham, even Aston Villa, albeit they're keeping hold of Unai Emery. Mass changes for Aston Villa this season.
Yeah, they've lost a lot of their best players as well.
And even the likes of the teams that did well just outside of the top 6 last season, like your Sunderland and your Brentford and your Bournemouth, big changes for all of them as well, maybe apart from Sunderland, but can they, you know what I mean? There's so much change that there is a real opportunity for, amidst the chaos of the new manager, the new signings, the new system, the new everything. If we were the only ones going through that, I'd be a bit more like, okay, maybe it is going to still be a tough season and, there's going to be a lot to get used to, but there's so much change going on around us. I personally, I don't think we're going to win the league. Do you know what I mean? I think that that's a massive ask. And I know the narrative is there with Conte, 10th, back 3, Premier League, what title or whatever. I think there's a lot more nuance surrounding our current situation than there was then. But I genuinely believe 2nd to 5th are open game. I do. I feel like it's genuinely possible for us to finish 2nd. And that's just largely because of, like I say, everything that's gone on around us. So, Nina, we'll wrap up with, what are your expectations for Chelsea and Xabi Alonso's first season in the Premier League?
Getting into Champions League football is a must. Like, that's the bare minimum criteria now. I think we are all very much on the same page. I think the challenge and expectation, I think what I'd love to see is actually winning a domestic cup. I say that every year, but getting to a Wembley final, as like entitled as this sounds, isn't impressive. Even in Chelsea's darkest, worst seasons, we've been there somehow, by hook or by crook. We make it to a final at Wembley, or a semi at least. But coaching a win there is something we haven't seen in a very long time, and I think for Alonso that would be impressive. Like, coach a win at Wembley, like win a domestic cup. Again, it's like silverware. If you're talking about realistic silverware this season, it is that, and we haven't done it in a long time. So can you go and win an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup? Don't distinguish between the two. We haven't won either in a long time, so beggars can't be choosers. Getting into the Champions League, of course, and again, maybe this is a little bit too much, but I wouldn't shy away from saying us being in some sort of a title race. Again, there's so much transition, like you say, in the league this season, so many new managers, so there's more of an unknown. You've just lost lost in the last few years two of the best managers in the league now. So it's more open. You know, you can talk about having a bit more of a chance, having a better crack at it. Of course, Arsenal are the most threatening team in the league. They are the team to beat. They are the reigning champions. As much as it hurts us, they are by maybe like a significant amount better than every team going into the season, of course.
Yeah,
but
100%.
it's not to say that you can't push them and you can't challenge them and you can't be a threat. In order to do that, you have to beat them. And that's another thing we haven't done. We haven't beaten Arsenal in 5 years in the Premier League. If you're talking about wanting to close that gap, then go and do it. But seriously, I think we've given Arsenal a tough time in a lot of games in previous seasons. If under Alonso we can like click in and just get our idea right, I think we've got the players to do it. Why not beat Arsenal? Why not beat Arsenal this season? You know, at least once, but have the confidence that you can do it. And I think quality is there, just the execution, because we've seen that Arsenal, yes, they're amazing. They're a step above everyone, but they're not unbeatable. And I think Chelsea, if you've got these ambitions, you can't keep going to the Emirates with this underdog mindset of this, can we get against Arsenal? No, the next step to do is to beat Arsenal. That's it. It's as simple as that. I want to see it done this season.
That'd be like a little trophy of its own, wouldn't it, for next season?
I know, and that's really sad to say. So all the Arsenal fans, if there are any, just shut your ears.
Look, that's the thing, though, is like to the victor, the spoils, right? Is Arsenal winning the Premier League and being dominant for so long, and us being in this situation where what we really want to see us do is beat them. You know, that's what you get to have when you have the success that Arsenal have had at the end of the day. So as annoying as it is, I don't begrudge it, because I'm sure they felt like that with us for a long time as well. Obviously, after all the success that we had.
The tide must turn.
Exactly. And look, Arsenal have been part of a duopoly for the past few years with City, and that is opening up now. So everything changes from here on out. And, you know, it'd be really interesting to see what happens with Arsenal next season, but as well as, like, obviously all the teams around us. I think it's just going to be a fascinating season. We had a hot take on the podcast the other day. Someone was saying that Xabi Alonso is going to be the Chelsea second ever manager behind Mourinho. And what I realised, we started when we were having that conversation, we've never had a manager that's won the Premier League and the Champions League in their tenures. So that's kind of what it would, you know, if Xabi Alonso can do those both things in the next few years, then that cements him as arguably the best manager Chelsea have ever had, which would be unbelievable. So that feels like a fantastic place to wrap it up. It's been really good to see you again, mate. I'm so glad to have you back on the channel.
Good to see you. Yeah, no, amazing work. And obviously everyone watching, subscribe to Matt. So doing some fantastic work here and really, really great content. So make sure you support.
Nice one, much appreciated. And guys, of course, if you haven't already, head over to Nina's Chelsea Corner and subscribe to her channel, because she's going to be back in a big way this season. Excellent match reviews. You'll be going to a lot of games this season as well, will you?
Yes,
yeah, cool. So in fan reaction from the stands, the soaking up the what we know are going to be good vibes about Xabi Alonso. Nice one, Nina. It's been great to have you on. And guys, thanks very much for sticking around until the end of the video. If you did, we will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.